Namaskaram, and welcome to the Heritage of India new class, Prabandhams and Stotrams, with Emperuman's Anugraham and the blessings of the Acharyan and all the elders. I embark on this class. Thank you very much for attending. I'll say a few words about the class in just a moment, but the topic for today and for the next 2 weeks, it's going to be kulasEkhara AzhvAr's, Sri kulasEkhara AzhvAr's perumAl Tirumozhi. That's the name of the Prabandham. And from that Prabandham, we are taking a padigam, the fifth padigam. It's called tarutuyaram taDAyEl. And this is part 1 of that. I think there will be a part 2 and a part 3, so it will be a 3-week affair. So I've started the recording. And the class objective, I want to say a few words about it. So the idea is to teach Divya Prabandham and Sanskrit Stotrams. So the Divya Prabandham is in Tamil. And of course, the Sanskrit Stotrams will be in Sanskrit. And the Stotrams will be taken quite often from Swami Desikan's works, but not always. There are other people who have composed valuable works as well. So we will cover some of those as well. And we will alternate between Divya Prabandham and Sanskrit Stotrams. We will probably teach maybe 2 padigams and then a Sanskrit Stotram, and then return to a couple of padigams and so on. And we will teach it with full meaning and appreciation, and also there will be considerable emphasis on chanting. I think in truth, even if you don't know the meaning, the slokas are effective, just like the medication that you take, even if you don't know its name or the molecular structure, that is still effective. I think there's somebody who is not muted. Could you? Okay, thanks. So, as I was saying, the objective is to teach Divya Prabandham and Sanskrit Stotrams and alternate between them. So we will teach a couple of padigams and then a Sanskrit Stotram and then back to Divya Prabandham, etc. We'll teach it with full meaning, appreciation, and chanting. I think it's one thing to know the meaning, and another thing to get fully involved in it, the same way that the composers, the enlightened composers of these Prabandhams and Stotrams did. And we would also emphasize, more than in the previous class, chanting. The ultimate outcome is to teach you to chant it with the full knowledge of the meaning and appreciation of its message. And the intent is to deepen appreciation for our heritage. And as a secondary objective, we would like to increase people's knowledge of Tamil and Sanskrit, because ultimately, you would like to be able to understand the pasarams on your own without as much help. You might still need some help, but at least the amount of help that you need would be much less if you learn more literary Tamil words and some Sanskrit words as well. So anyway, so that is a secondary objective for me. We will see how successful we are. And also, as a secondary objective, I would like you to become aware of related works. So that way you can have a deeper appreciation for our heritage. And as with the previous class, I'm dedicating this class to the memory of my father, my mother, and my wife's grandfather. They were enlightened souls who have inspired both of us. So with gratitude, we dedicate this class to their memory. Now, some terminology, a few words about the terminology. The word pasuram is just a verse. For example, if you know Tirupavai, Margaret Thinger is a pasuram, is a Tirupavai pasuram. And so it's just kind of a smallest element. And then usually, typically, about 10 to 12 of these, or a small collection of pasurams, constitute what is known as a padigam. And then a prabandham is usually something larger. Several padigams together constitute a prabandham, okay? Now, so that's kind of like the hierarchy, if you will. So pasuram, smallest, padigam, slightly bigger. Prabandham is usually even larger than that. But this is kind of like on a typical case, okay? But then there are exceptions. For example, to give you an example, a Prabandham may be as small as just having 10 verses. For example, Amaranadipiran by Tirupannarvar, it has only 10 verses in it. So whereas Thiruvaimuri has about 1102 verses in it. So you can see that the Prabandham itself can range from being very small to very large. Now the very small one usually does not have to be divided, does not need a hierarchy. So in that case, the Amaranadipiran is also a padigam by its own right, and it has just 10 pasurams in it. Whereas something like Thiruvaimuri, it needs an additional level of hierarchy beyond pasurams and padigams and so on. But we'll talk about that later. But this is kind of a general hierarchy for a typical Prabandham. And there are exceptions for small and large Prabandhams. Now, because I want us to pronounce things correctly, I'm going to be using an italicized notation for transliteration. In other words, whenever I'm writing non-English words, I will try to use an italicized notation. And so in the italicized notation, things have a specific pronunciation. For example, the capital letter and the lowercase letter have different pronunciation. For example, perumAl, this capital A is an elongated vowel. This L, the capital L, is la instead of la, for example. So anyway, so taniyans, taniyans, anyway. So I will be using an italicized notation, and I'll explain that as we go along, okay? Now, in general, so in this particular class today and for the next 2 weeks, we are going to be covering a Prabandham called perumAl Tirumozhi. By the way, that should be just a lowercase o. I'll change that after this class, perumAl Tirumozhi. So that perumAl Tirumozhi is a Prabandham written by kulasEkhara AzhvAr. But before we start learning or chanting pasurams from that Prabandham, you have to go through a couple of intermediate steps. You have to first recite something called the taniyans, and then taniyans that are specific to this Prabandham. Now, taniyans are themselves verses, but they're not composed by, in this case, kulasEkhara AzhvAr. No, it's not composed by kulasEkhara AzhvAr. The perumAl Tirumozhi pasurams are composed by kulasEkhara AzhvAr, but the pasurams that are part of these taniyans, they are composed by others to glorify either this AzhvAr, namely kulasEkhara AzhvAr, or his work, which is perumAl Tirumozhi, or in the case of the taniyans, podu means general. In the case of the taniyans, they may be glorifying our acharyas as well as all the AzhvArs. Okay, so podu means general. Taniyan means it stands alone. Taniyaga nikkiன்றது, அதனால் இது தனியன் என்று சொல்லப்படுகின்றது. It stands separate from the Prabandham itself, so that's why it's called a taniyan. So it turns out that regardless of what Divya Prabandham pasurams you want to recite, you generally have to first recite 5 taniyans, that is 5 verses. They're all in Sanskrit. We will cover them. And then, because this is perumAl Tirumozhi, you will recite 2 taniyans that are specific to perumAl Tirumozhi, okay? So what we will do today is that if we start covering all the taniyans today, we will not get to perumAl Tirumozhi today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover the first 3 taniyans from the taniyans, and then I'll cover both of the Prabandham specific taniyans, perumAl Tirumozhi taniyans, and then we will start getting into the individual pasurams. And in the next class and the following class, I'll cover the Taniyan number 4 and 5, okay? Okay, and just a few words about the sources. So the lyrics are taken generally from the Prapatti website. And the chanting, I'm giving some YouTube links here. What I will do is when I'll send you an email after the class, and that will give you the table that you are seeing, so that you can figure out where to go on YouTube to listen to the taniyans, or the Prabandham specific taniyans, or the actual pasurams of the particular padigam that we are covering today, okay? Okay, so let's start with the taniyan number 1. So that, like I said, there are 5 taniyans. So you can think of the taniyans as something like this. The actual pasurams of the AzhvAr, think of the AzhvAr as the keynote speaker. The taniyans are the introduction of the keynote speaker, more or less. That is, they talk about the glory of the keynote speaker, if you will. In our case, the keynote speaker is kulasEkhara AzhvAr. Now, so that there are 5 Taniyans. We are now starting with Taniyan number 1 of 5. And that is a salutation to Swami Deshikan. And it's composed by Sri Brahmatantra Swatantra Jiyar, who was the first Jiyar of Parakalamat, and he was a disciple of Swami Deshikan. Okay. Now the question is, why Deshikan? Why have a salutation to Swami Deshikan when we are about to recite Divya Prabandham? The answer is that, of course, Deshikan is a great acharya of the Vaishnava tradition. He was born 750 years before last year. We celebrated the 750th birth anniversary last year. But why Deshikan? What is relevant about Deshikan in the context of Divya Prabandhams? Well, he was very instrumental in the adoption of the Divya Prabandham as a Tamil Marai, and in the adoption of these for recitation, for chanting in temples. You have to think of the time 750 years ago during, say, Swami Deshikan's time, or 1,000 years ago during Bhagavad Ramanuja's time. So at that time, the temples were heavily into chanting Vedas, for example. And so you could, as you can imagine, it must have been very difficult to get the Divya Prabandhams accepted for chanting in temples. People who objected said, well, Sanskrit is Deva Bhasha, it is the language of the Devas, whereas the Tamil is not a Deva Bhasha. So why should we recite Tamil verses? That was one of their objections. And then secondly, the Vedas were apaurusheya. Apaurusheya means no author. The Vedas have no author. They are authorless. They were just heard by rishis. So they were heard. That's why they're called shrutis. Shruti means that which was heard. So in that sense, they are divine. They were not created by men who had feet of clay, whereas these Divya Prabandhams were composed by men and women, or mortal beings, if you will. So that was the second strike against the Divya Prabandhams. And so it took a lot of advocacy from Swami Deshikan and other acharyas to get the Divya Prabandhams accepted. Swami Deshikan, argued that Tamil is a very sacred language. Unlike many other languages, it is not derived from Sanskrit. It's an independent language of its own, and it's the language of Agastya Rishi. So it took a lot of effort from him and other acharyans to get the Divya Prabandhams accepted for chanting, and that's the reason that we need to pay our respect to Swami Deshikan whenever we chant Divya Prabandham. So we should be just as grateful to him as we are to the AzhvArs who compose the pastorams themselves. Okay, so the verse is very simple. So it says, Rama. Let me first read it and give the meaning, and then I'll teach you how to recite it. Okay, so it says Ramanuja Daya Patram, but typically I give the verse in its native language, and then I give the verse in English, and then I give the meaning, and then any additional auxiliary notes. So if you look at, so depending on what you're comfortable with, Devanagari script or the English transliteration. So you can see, for example, the transliteration tries to be faithful to the language. So the capital A's are the elongated vowels, for example, and so on. And because these are Sanskrit verses, we will try to be very careful in pronouncing them. For example, Bhushanam, the BH. Okay, so the Tamil, unlike Sanskrit, is not as rich in the variety of consonants. So when you go to Sanskrit, you do have a rich variety. So we will try to be faithful to that variety. So we will make a difference between Ba and Bha, for example, and so on. Okay, for example, Venkatanatharyam, you see this TH here. So Venkatanatharyam, etc. And Deshikam, this is neither S nor SH. So I'm using capital S to represent a sound that is in between Sa and Sha, Deshikam. Okay, the same Sha that's used in Shruti or Shila, for example. Anyway, so this is a salutation to Swami Deshikan. The last part is easy to understand. Vande I bow to Vedanta Deshikam. I bow to Swami Vedanta Desikan. That's how it ends. But he's also known as Venkatanathan. So you can see that he's known as Srimad Venkatanatharyam. So it simply mentions the other name for him, Srimad Venkatanatharyam, Vande Vedanta Deshikam. And then it says a couple of things about Swami Deshikan, a couple of glories of Swami Deshikan. So it says that he is Ramanuja Daya Patram. Now, the interesting thing about Sanskrit is that at first it may be intimidating if you're not familiar with it. But then as you read and try and know exactly how to parse it, you'll find that in maybe 25% of the cases, they sound like a Tamil word that you might know. It's not that the words came into Sanskrit from Tamil. It's generally in the other direction. But to the extent that we use some of those words in spoken Tamil at least, you will find that we are able to relate to them. For example, Daya Patram. We use the word patram, for in kitchen we have a lot of patrams. That's exactly the kind of patram that this is talking about, though it's a metaphor. So Daya Patram, Daya means mercy, Patram means a vessel or receptacle. Ramanuja Daya Patram. So it says that Swami Deshikan was a receptacle of the Acharya Ramanuja's mercy. Now, which Ramanuja is it referring to? Is it referring to Bhagavat Ramanuja? No, actually, it is referring to a different Ramanuja. So it's referring to someone called Sri Atreya Ramanuja Acharya, also called Kidambi Pullar, and it was the Swami's maternal uncle. But that's okay. It just says everybody needs to be a receptacle of their Acharya's mercy. So in this case, Swami Deshikan was his own Acharya's. He received the mercy of his Acharya. So that's one glory about him. And then he wore bhushanam. Bhushanam means ornament. Again, sometimes we use the word bhushanam at least in the Brahmin Tamil, for example. So bhushanam means argument. So he wore as ornaments a couple of things: jnanam, knowledge, and then vairagyam. Vairagyam means detachment. Okay, so jnanam is certainly important for an acharyan, and certainly vairagyam is important for an acharyan as well. And in fact, it's important for any of us, right? So, for example, the Bhagavad Gita, which is a how to live manual that was spoken by Bhagavan Krishna. So there is, in chapter 2, for example, verse number 48, it says, Yogastaha Kuru Karmani Sangam Tyaktva Dhananjaya Siddhya Siddhyo Samo Bhutva Samatvam Yoga Uchyate. It talks about the non-attachment. For example, it says Sangam Tyaktva Dhananjaya. Sangam means attachment, Tyaktva means abandon, Dhananjaya, Dhananjaya, O Arjuna. So it says, O Arjuna, just give up attachment. So you see that message is conveyed multiple times by Bhagavad Gita in chapter number 2. Sangam Tyaktva Dhananjaya, Yoga Saha Kuru Karmani. You just keep doing the things that you need to do. Karmani, the things you need to do, keep doing them. Siddhya Siddhyo Samo Bhutva. Siddhi, Asiddhi. So taken together, they are Siddhya Siddhyo. It seems like the words are repeated, but it's really a word and its opposite that follows it. Siddhi is success. Asiddhi means failure, the opposite. Siddhya Siddhyo Samo Bhutva. So success and failure, Samo Bhutva, treating them alike. That Samatvam Yoga Uchyate. That Samatvam, that evenness of perception, Adaitan Yogam, Adadan Yogam Yendru Sollapadigirade. That Samatvam Yoga Uchyate. That Samatvam is called yoga. So that's what Bhagavan Krishna says. But anyway, so that's a message about non-attachment or detachment, which is called Vairagya. And it says that Swami Deshikan had both Jnanam and Vairagyam as the ornaments. Okay, so that's a simple meaning. He was a receptacle of Ramanuja's mercy. Knowledge and detachment were his ornaments. And he is Sri Venkatanathan, that's his original name. I bow to him. And that Vedanta Deshikan, the Vedanta Deshikan means master, teacher of Vedanta. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you how to chant it. Okay, so repeat one, I'll say each phrase twice. The second time I say it after me. And after we learn the next 3 verses, I will play a goshti and you can say it along with the goshti. So right now, the second time I say a phrase, just say it with me, but please, please, please keep yourself muted, okay? Ramanuja daya patram jnana vairagya bhushanam Ramanuja daya patram jnana vairagya bhushanam Srimad Venkatanatharyam Vande Vedanta Deshikam Srimad Venkatanatharyam Vande Vedanta Deshikam. Okay, so I'll have the Goshti video, but I'll play it after I've covered more of these taniyans. At the bottom here, like I said, as a secondary objective, I'm trying to get you to learn some, at least a little bit of Sanskrit. So some of the words from the verse I've given here, and then the meanings of those verses. And in general, you may not learn to remember all the words that you learn from a verse, but I think from every verse, just mark 1 or 2 words to learn, so that if you learn just those 1 or 2 words, then over a period of time, you will become fairly good with Sanskrit vocabulary. So maybe I'm suggesting a couple of words using this color. For example, Vairagya, learn that its meaning is detachment. Bhushanam, its meaning is ornament. And of course, you may already be familiar with that. So that's the significance of this color. These are simply suggested words for you to memorize, okay? Okay, the second Padutaniyan is Padutaniyan number 205. It's a salutation to the lineage of Acharyas. So we have an Acharya Parampara, and that Acharya Parampara is captured in this picture here. Unfortunately, it's shown as a loop. It's not a loop. It's not a closed loop. It should be thought of as a chain. It starts with Shriyapati or Emperuman, and then it goes to Tayar, Sri Devi, and then, so in other words, this is our primary Acharya. Sri Devi is the next Acharya in this chain, and then Sena Mudaliar or Vishwaksenar is the next one. Of course, all of them are celestial beings, and none of them are human beings that walked on this earth except in incarnations. But so starting with Nammarvar here is the actual chain of human Acharyas, if you will. So Sri Nammarvar, Srimad Nathamunis, Uyak Kundar, Manakkal Nambi, Sri Alavandar, Periya Nambi, Bhagavat Ramanujar, etc. Okay, and it goes on, but think of it as a break here. It's not that it's a closed circle. It is not that at all. Okay. Okay. By the way, I forgot to mention that going back to the previous Padutaniyan, this is a Taniyan that is recited by the Vadakalai Sampradayam. There is a similar Padutaniyan Pasuram, Padutaniyan verse that is recited by the Tenkalai Sampradayam, and that is in praise of Sri Manavada Mamunigar. Generally, for this class, we will use the Vadakalai one. However, I will teach you the other one also at a later time. Okay. Anyway, so coming back to the second Padutaniyan. So this is about a salutation to the lineage of Acharyas. What does it say? It says, starting with the consort of Lakshmi, that is Shriyapati, consort of Lakshmi, Shriyapati, that is the one that we call Emperuman. And then, so that's the starting point of this lineage. Then with Sri Nathamuni and Sri Yamunacharya in the middle. Yamunacharya is also known as Sri Alavandar. So it kind of lists certain points in this chain, if you will. Shriyapati, there's Emperuman here. And then Nathamuni is over here. And then Yamunacharya is over here, Sri Alavandar. Okay, and then so it says, starting with the consort of Lakshmi, with Sri Nathamuni and Sri Yamunacharya in the middle, and extending till my own Acharya. But this was composed by Kuratharman, who is a renowned disciple of Bhagavat Ramanujar. So when he said extending till my own Acharya, he was referring to his own Acharya, that was Bhagavat Ramanujar. But I think he was nice enough to make it generic. Instead of naming Bhagavat Ramanujar, he simply said extending till my own Acharya. And whether it's a bug or a feature, if it's a bug, it turned out to be a feature. So when you say it, for example, when you say till my own Acharya, you are referring to your own Acharya. Okay, even though the original verse as spoken by Kuratharman may have referred to his Acharyan, Sri Bhagavat Ramanujar. Okay, so he says, so he describes a chain, the Guru Parampara, by naming the starting points, some midpoints, and then extending till my own Acharyan. That lineage of Acharyans I bow to. Okay, so that's the meaning of this. So the meaning, the words are very simple. Lakshminatha Samarambham. You know the word Arambham, that's what I meant. So when you'll see that many of the Sanskrit words that you come across, at least a few of them, roughly maybe one-fourth of them, or 20% of them, may be similar to a Tamil word that you use. So in that sense, it's not very difficult to understand the meaning of the Sanskrit verses once you have parsed them into individual words. Lakshminatha Samarambham, so starting with Lakshmi Nathan, Lakshmi's consort. Natha, that refers to Nathamuni, Yamuna, Yamunacharya, Madhyamam, Madhyil, in the middle. Asmad, my Acharya, Asmad Acharya, my own Acharya, Paryantam, Yennudaya Acharyan Varayil, that is still my own Acharyan. That lineage of Acharyas, Vande Guru Paramparam, that Guru Paramparam, that lineage of Acharyas, I bow to. Okay, so that's what it means. And I'm kind of suggesting that you learn Asmad and Paryantam as the two new words from this verse, so that way your vocabulary will grow. Okay, so let me teach you how to recite it. Once again, when I recite it for the second time, you chant it, but please keep yourself muted. Okay. Lakshminatha Samarambham Natayamuna Madhyamam. Lakshminatha Samarambham Natayamuna Madhyamam. Asmad Acharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Asmad Acharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Okay, so that's the second Puduttaniyan. Okay, now the third one. So this is maybe new even for those who took the previous class. Puduttaniyan number 3 of 5. So this is a salutation to Bhagavat Ramanujar. So Bhagavat Ramanujar, again, is one of the Acharyans who did a tremendous amount of work to popularize Divya Prabandhams. And so we need to pay special respects to him when we are about to chant the Divya Prabandhams. And this Taniyan is also composed by Kuratharman, also the same renowned disciple of Bhagavat Ramanujar. And so let me go through the meaning first. So it says, to the feet of that Ramanuja I surrender. So it says, I am surrendering to the feet of Bhagavat Ramanujar. And then it describes that Bhagavat Ramanujar in multiple ways. He is my guru, it says. And he is a divine ocean of mercy, it says, that Bhagavat Ramanujar. And it also describes a couple of other things about him. It says, he who daily for Achyuta's golden lotus feet bore great love and considered everything else as worthless, grass, or turumbu as we call it in Tamil, okay? Now when I give the meanings here, I generally try to keep the same structure as the lines of the original verse. So typically the first line of the meaning that corresponds to the first line of the verse. So that way it's easier for you to learn the words instead of knowing the overall meaning of just the whole verse without knowing what each part is saying. So if I give the meaning such that the first line is the meaning of the first line here, second line is the meaning of the second line here, and so on, then you have a much better chance of correlating words from the original to the meaning, and that way you're much better to understand the bhavam or the emotion of the verse, of each part of the verse, okay? So it says, he who daily for Achyuta's golden lotus feet. So that sometimes the sentence structure might seem convoluted because I'm trying to retain that one-to-one correspondence between the lines here and the lines here. But then when I explain it, you will understand the actual the sentence that you can form out of it. So it says here, Ramanuja, He bore great love daily for Achyuta's golden lotus feet. Achyutan is Emperman, and considered everything else as grass. It'll literally say grass. Trunaya mene. Truna means grass, but of course Trunai simply means it's a proxy for something worthless, or what we call turumbu in Tamil. Okay. Okay, so let's go through the actual verse word by word. Yo nityam achyuta padambuja yugma rukma vyamohatas taditarani trunaya mene. Okay, yo means he who. So that's what you see here. Nityam, you know the word nityam, right? We use the word nityam in Tamil as well. Nityam means daily. Achyuta padambuja, Achyuta's lotus feet. Padambuja means pada ambuja. Ambuja is one of many words in Sanskrit for lotus. You know, the Sanskrit has so many words for lotus. I think you'll be surprised by why a language really needs to have so many different words to describe the same thing. But anyway, it is very rich in terms of how many words mean lotus. Padambuja means pada ambuja, the lotus feet. So that's lotus feet here. Yugma rukma. Okay, so yugma rukma means a golden pair. So it says, he who daily for Achyuta's golden lotus feet. But you see the yugma rukma, you know, in some languages, in English, for example, we put the adjective golden in front, before the noun that generally comes after it. So we will say a golden pair. So the adjective golden comes before the noun pair. Whereas in this case, in this Sanskrit phrase, yugma rukma, so here yugma is the noun, rukma is the golden, meaning golden. It comes later, right? So just to make sure that you don't misunderstand that, I'm color coding it. So whenever the word's order is different in the meaning compared to the original sequence, I'm using color code, so you will know that yugma means pair and rukma means golden. Okay, so that's the meaning of the color code when I use a color code of this form. So it says here, so he who daily for Achyuta's golden lotus feet bore great love, you know, vyamohatas. You know what moham means? Moham means love or desire. Vyamoham means great desire. So he bore great love for Achyuta's golden lotus feet. And what else? Tad itarani trunaya mene. Truna means turumbu or grass. Mene, he considered. So he considered everything else as turumbu, as grass. Everything else, tad itarani. Now, you see, if at first it seems like you don't know any of these words, but you remember in Tamil, we say, we use the word idara. For example, you might say, just focus on studying. Idara vishayangala patti kavalapadade. Okay, we say that. So we say, just focus on this. Don't worry about idara vishayangala. That idara is exactly this. Okay, so itarani means just the plural version of it. Tad itarani, those other things, matra vishayangal. Matra vishayangalai turumbaha madittar, turumbaha kardinarava. So that's what I mean. So when you're able to parse the words of a Sanskrit verse, in many cases you will say, oh yeah, there is a Tamil word that sounds roughly like that and has the same meaning as that as well. Okay. So anyway, tad itara itarani. Itaram means idara vishayangal, that is other things. Tad itarani, he bore great love and considered everything else, or considered other things as worthless grass. Asmad Gurur, he is my Guru. Asmad means my Guru, Bhagavatosya, divine Dayaika Sindho. Now this Dayaika Sindho, that again is a phrase you will come across very often in many different slokas. So you should probably get used to it. Daya, already know it means mercy. Sindho means ocean. You think of the Sindhu Nadi, the river. So it's a large body of water. So Sindho means ocean. Dayaika Sindho means ocean of mercy. So he is my Guru. That's Asmat Gurur. And also Bhagavatosya Dayaika Sindho. He is a divine ocean of mercy. And then Ramanujasya Charanao. Ramanujarin Tiruvadigalai Sharanam Prapadye. Sharanamaha Patrigiren. So to that feet of Bhagavat Ramanuja, I surrender. Okay. Okay. So that's the meaning of this third Padutaniyan. So let's, I'll tell you how to recite it. So here, okay, this is how it goes. Again, the second time I recite it, say it with me, but please keep yourself muted. Yo nityamachyuta padambuja yugma rukma. Yo nityamachyuta padambuja yugma rukma. Vyamohatastaditarani trinaya mene. Vyamohatastaditarani trinaya mene. Asmad guror bhagavatosya dayaika sindho. Asmad guror bhagavatosya dayaika sindho. Ramanujasya charanau sharanam prapadye. Ramanujasya charanau sharanam prapadye. For the first charanam means feet. The sharanam means refuge. Okay. Okay, so we have now learned the third of the 5 Paduttaniyans, and there are 2 other Paduttaniyans which I will teach in the next 2 classes. But I just want to say that the 4th Paduttaniyan, which we will learn next week, is a salutation to Sri Nammarvar, who is considered the head of all the Arvars. And then the last Paduttaniyan, the number 5 of 5, that's a salutation to the Arvars, as well as Bhagavat Ramanujar again, but we will learn that 2 weeks from now. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to play a Goshti video, which will recite all these 5 Paduttaniyans, and I've taught you the first 3 Paduttaniyans, so you should try to chant along with the Goshti video, again keeping yourself muted, and when I'll also let it run through the 4th and the 5th one. When it goes through the 4th and the 5th one, you can either sit back and listen to it while looking at the words, or you can make an effort to say it. You'll see that the sing song is roughly the same as the previous one. So if you try, you may be able to recite it. But whatever you do, don't unmute yourself. Okay. Okay. So here's I'm going to bring that video, Goshti video. Okay. Here we go.
Ramanujaya patram jnana vairagyaposhanam Srimad Venkatanadharyam Vande Vedantadeshikam Lakshminada Samarambam Nadayamunamadhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Parambaram Yo nityamachyuta padambuja yugma rukma Vyamohatastaditarani trinaya mene Asmadguror bhagavatosya dayaika sindho Ramanujasya charanau charanam prapadye Madha pita yuvadayastanaya vibhuris sarvam yadeva niyamena madanvayanam Adyasya kulapater bagulabhiramam Shrimattadangri-yugalam pranamami murdhnat Bhudam sarasvamagatakvaya bhattanada Shri Bhaktisara kulasEkhara yogi vagan Bhaktangrireni parakala yatendra visran Shrimat parangushamunim pranadosmi nityam.
Okay, so that was the 5 Paduttaniyans. And you will get used to it because you will, whenever we cover the Divya Prabandhams, we will start by reciting the Paduttaniyans. Okay, so this is something you will be reciting very often in the future. Okay, so now we will get into the Padiyam, which is the main topic for us today. So the Avatarika, or an introduction to the Padiyam. So the Padiyam was composed by Sri kulasEkhara AzhvAr, and so you can see that it's kulasEkhara, it's that intermediate S, Shekhara, that's that second Ka, kulasEkhara AzhvAr, okay, Sri kulasEkhara AzhvAr. And he was a Chera king, and I say that the period was 5th to 10th century CE, Common Era. Now, I don't try to narrow it down to a specific period, because when you look at different sources, you will find different periods. So I'm just kind of using a broad interval to say he lived within this period. And then but if you look at specific references, they will probably narrow it down even further. Now, he was a Chera king. The Chera country is roughly in Kerala today, or what is called Kerala today. And so the fact that he is a Chera king comes across in some of his signatures as well. So when he refers to himself in the Palashruti, so he refers to himself as Kolli Kavalan. Now, Kolli was the capital of the Chera kingdom that he ruled. So Kolli Kavalan means the protector of Kolli. So that means he was the Chera king. And it turns out that he was also, apparently he enlarged his kingdom to include the Pandya kingdom and the Chora kingdom as well. So he also refers to himself as Kudal Nayakan. Nayakan means Lord. Kudal is another name for Madurai. Madurai was the capital of the Pandya kingdom. It's also known as Nan-Mada Kudal, and Kudal is short for that. So Kudal Nayakan means he was the king of the Pandya kingdom as well. Kori Kon, Kon means king. Kori refers to a place called Tirukori, also known as Urayur, and Urayur was the capital of the Chora kingdom. So he's essentially referring to himself as the Chera king, the Pandya king, and the Chora king. So apparently his kingdom did encompass all of those three. And he was a great Rama Bhakta. And the thing is, and for that reason, he was called perumAl. So he's called kulasEkhara perumAl, okay, because perumAl is a name for Sri Rama. And because he was a great Bhakta of Sri Rama, he himself was called perumAl, so kulasEkhara perumAl. Now it turns out that among the AzhvArs, there are only 2 AzhvArs who carry a suffix that indicates that they are perumAl themselves. Okay, so kulasEkhara AzhvAr is one of them. You might think about who that other person might be. That other person is Tirumozhi Piran. So it's a Tirumozhi AzhvAr who is also known as Tirumozhi Piran, because in a famous incident, he ordered the Tirukkodandai Perumal Aravamudan. He said, Kedandavar Erundirundu Pesuvari Kesane. He said, can you get up slightly from your lying down position? And according to legends, Emperor Man did get up. So in that sense, Emperor Man obeyed the command of Tirumozhi AzhvAr. So they kind of traded their positions. Emperor Man became an adimai of Tirumozhi AzhvAr. So the Emperor Man got to be called Aravamuda AzhvAr, and Tirumozhi AzhvAr got to be called Tirumozhi Piran. Anyway, so similarly, kulasEkhara AzhvAr is called kulasEkhara perumAl. He was a great Rama Bhakta. For example, there's a very famous lullaby. One of his padigams is actually a lullaby for Sri Rama. It says, Ennudaya innamude ragavane taDAyEl. Ennudaya innamude. Ennudaya inimayana amude. My sweet nectar, O Raghava taDAyEl. It says, Mannupugal Kausalaidan Manivairu Vaittavane. Tennilangai Konmudigal Sindhu Vittai Sempanser. Kanninan Mamadul Pudaisur Kanabarathan Karmaniye. Ennudaya innamude ragavane taDAyEl. It's a very beautiful phrase. Ennudaya innamude. There's probably no other expression you can think of to say how dear you are to me. Ennudaya innamude ragavane taDAyEl. That's the expression that he uses to refer to Sri Rama. And of course, that's the reason that he is called perumAl. Okay. So the Prabandham that he wrote only one Prabandham, and that Prabandham is called perumAl Tirumozhi. It has a total of 105 pasurams, and they are divided into 10 padigams, and we are going to learn one of those padigams today. And this particular padigam is a Mangala Shasanam of Tiruvittuva Kodu. Tiruvittuva Kodu is a sthalam. It's one of the Divya Desams in Kerala. It's called a Malainadu Divya Desam. Malainadu refers to the mountainous region of Kerala. So it's a Mangala Shasanam. Mangala Shasanam simply means something in praise of, something that glorifies the perumAl in that particular Divya Desam. So it says Mangala Shasanam. It literally means wishing Mangalam on the perumAl of that Divya Desam. So Tiruvittuva Kodu is a Divya Desam in Kerala. It's on the banks of the Bharatapura river. You can see that my light blue river running, and that's the Bharatapura river. So Tiruvittuvakodu is here, in the kind of like about this, slightly lower in latitude than Coimbatore, for example, but it's on the Kerala side. Okay, so it gives you some idea of where Tiruvittuvakodu is. The perumAl there is called Sri Uyavanda perumAl. You can see the temple, which is that, you can see that when you go from Tamil Nadu to Kerala, the temple architecture changes dramatically. So you start getting these palm trees and so on, and also you don't have the traditional gopuram of the Dravidian architecture. But anyway, so this is the Sri Uyavanda perumAl Kovil in Tiruvittuvakodu. The Padigam we are going to learn is in praise of the Emperuman of this particular sthalam. Okay. Now, why are we starting with this particular Padigam? Why not something else? Well, of course, you could have chosen something else as well. But then there are some good reasons to start with this. This Padigam captures Sharanagati at its very best. Sharanagati is unconditional surrender to Emperuman. In Sri Vaishnavism, Sharanagati is considered the principal upayam, or the means to reach Emperuman. After all of us, we have a certain destination or objective or goal. That goal is called, also referred to as upayam. So upayam simply means goal or destination or objective. Our upayam is to get to Emperuman in Paramapadam or Sri Vaikuntham. So Emperuman is our destination, he is our upayam. But what is the means? What is the upayam to get to Emperuman? Well, the upayam is also Emperuman. You have to hold on to his feet. You have to surrender to him in order to get to him at Paramapadam. So in Sri Vaishnavism, we say that both the upayam and the upayam are Emperuman. And this particular Padigam talks about that upayam of Sharanagati in very unmistakable terms. It is it's a kind of surrender which is totally unconditional. It doesn't say, I will surrender to you if you will be good to me. It doesn't do that. It doesn't say, please give me this, and when you give me this, I will be, I'll be surrendered to you. No, it doesn't do that at all. It says, in fact, it says quite the opposite. It says, even if you totally ignore me, I surrender to you. Even if you give me a lot of sufferings on this earth, I will surrender to you because I have no other refuge on this earth. Okay, so that is the beauty of this pasuram. And you will see how eloquently and how vividly that Sharanagati is captured. I'll get to that in one moment. The idea expressed in this Padigam is also known as Ananyarha Seshatvam. Seshatvam, Sesha means Adimai or servant. So we are all Seshas. We are all Adimais or servants of the Lord. The Lord is called Seshi, Sheshi, or the master. So the Emperuman is the Sheshi, we are the Sheshas. So Sheshatvam is Adimaitanam, the servanthood, if you will. Ananyarha. Now Anya means someone else. So if Anya Sheshatvam would mean being a Sesha to someone other than Emperuman, that's what Anya Sheshatvam would mean. But this is Ananya Sheshatvam. So you have to put another negation in front. So this means that being an Adimai, or being a servant to none other than Emperuman. Ananyarha Seshatvam simply means being a servant to Emperuman only. It's also the same meaning as Ananya Gatitvam. Anya Gati would mean we are taking as our Gati, Sharanagati, using someone else other than Emperuman, but Ananya Gati negates it. So using no one other than Emperuman as our sole refuge. So that's what Ananya Gatitvam means. Okay. Now, I said that this represents Sharanagati, but then there are other people, other AzhvArs who have composed pasurams that capture that spirit of Sharanagati. What is different about this? You'll find that this particular Padigam is very vivid. Nothing is really left to imagination. And I say, if poetry shines on analogies, this particular Padigam is probably the most brilliant in all of the Nalayana Divya Prabandham. Analogies, they really add to the beauty of poetry. So now let me give you an example from Periyarvar Tirumozhi. I'm changing AzhvArs here, but I'm just trying to illustrate how analogy adds to the beauty of a pasuram. Okay, it says here, So here in this Periyar, so he's imagining a situation where a Nayaki, remember that we are all Jivatmas and Paramatma is Emperuman, and Paramatma is often viewed as the male and the Jivatmas are viewed as female. So and sometimes Arvars have created compositions in which they think of themselves as the female lover, Nayaki, and think of Emperuman as the male lover. And they often talk about viraha tapam. Viraha means separation. Tapam means pain. Literally it means heat, but the pain is a more general meaning. Viraha tapam means the pain of separation. So sometimes they will talk about the viraha tapam of being separated from Emperuman, that imagining themselves to be Nayakis. And here, this particular pasuk is where the mother of the Nayaki suddenly wakes up one day to find that her daughter, the Nayaki, has kind of eloped with Emperuman. So he came in the middle of the night and took her away. And it's almost as if Periyar is referring to the Emperuman marrying and taking Sri Andal away. Of course, he didn't do that without, in the middle of the night, without Periyar's knowledge. But you have to, in this particular pasuk, you have to imagine the mother waking up to find that the Nayaki is gone from the house, and apparently the Nayak and the Emperuman came and took her away in the middle of the night. He eloped with her. So the mother is in great anguish. She says, "Illam veriyodit tralo, en magalai yengum kane, en magalai yengum kane." Oh, how pathetic it is! How you can feel that the pathos in this. En magalai yengum kane. I don't see my daughter anywhere at all. Illam veriyodit tralo. Ennuடைய ஆம் ரொம்ப வெறிச்சோடி கிடக்கிறது. ஏனென்றால் என் மகளை எங்கும் காணேன். My house looks very deserted, because I'm not able to see my daughter anywhere. Now, he didn't stop there. He gives an analogy here. How bad does it look? Well, here's the analogy. Nallador tamarai poigai. So imagine a tamarai poigai, a pond, Nallador is a very beautiful tamarai poigai, a pond with lotus flowers. Just imagine that, beautiful red lotus blossomed everywhere. However, imagine that suddenly there is frost, and the frost is killing off the lotus flowers. So it says, Nan malar mel pani sore. Pani is frost. So on that flower, the frost has fallen. Alliyam thadum udundittu. All the petals, inner petals, outer petals, they have all fallen down. Udundittu. Araharindal uttadalo. Aragu arindadal uttadalo. The beauty got destroyed, and just like that, with my daughter gone from the house looks deserted. Okay, so you can see that an analogy of the frost killing off the flower and destroying the beauty of the house. So the AzhvAr is using that analogy to explain how bad the house looks with the daughter gone. Okay, one moment. Okay, so but you will see that in this Padigam, the AzhvAr is using analogy after analogy. The first Pasuram uses an analogy, the second Pasuram uses a different analogy, etc. All except that the 10th Pasuram. So they will be using analogies, okay? Now, the Sharanagati part, so like I said, there are several people, several Acharyas, several AzhvArs who have captured the idea of Sharanagati. Just to give you an example, in Swami Desikan's Tamil works, Adaikala Pattu, it says, Arul Varadar Nilayilakil Ambenanan Amindene. He compares himself to an arrow. Arul Varadar Nilayilakil. So he says, I am an arrow. I shot myself straight at the merciful Arul Varadar, the merciful Varadan's Nilayilakil, fixed target. So keeping the merciful Varadaraja perumAl as my fixed target, I went there as an arrow and took refuge at his feet. So like an arrow shot from a bow, and he went straight to the merciful Varadan and took refuge there. Okay, so that's another Acharyan who has expressed Sharanagati. Even Mundaka Upanishad also captures that's a similar idea. Pranavo Dhanu. The Dhanu means Dhanur, that is the bow. using the pranava mantram or om as the bow. You can look at the metaphor here. Sharo hi atma. Sharam is the sharam, that is the arrow. The arrow is the atma. And the Brahmata Lakshyam, the Lakshyam or the target is Brahma. So it says here, using the Pranava Mantram as the bow, using your own Atma as the arrow, and using the Brahman or the Supreme Being as the Lakshyam, as the target. That's how Sharanagati should be done. Okay, so anyway, so you can see that there are several people who have expressed the concept of Sharanagati. Okay, so that is an avatarika, and now we are going to get into the Prabandham. But before we do that, we have to learn the taniyans that are specific to perumAl Tirumozhi. perumAl Tirumozhi is the Prabandham from which we have taken a specific padigam for learning today. So perumAl Tirumozhi, there are two taniyans. This is taniyan number 1. Now, this is composed by UDAYAVAR. UDAYAVAR is another name for Bhagavat Ramanujar, okay, whom you see on the right. Now, this padigam that you are looking at, it's an extraordinarily special padigam. What makes it extraordinarily special? Well, there are a couple of things. One is, who is the author, the composer? The composer is Bhagavat Ramanujar. What is the language in which it's composed? It's Tamil. And those two make it very special, because you see, how many works of Bhagavat Ramanujar in Tamil do you know? How many works in Tamil of Bhagavat Ramanujar do you know? Well, Sri Bhashyam is in Sanskrit. Gita Bhashyam is in Sanskrit. So everything that Sri Bhagavat Ramanujar wrote is in Sanskrit, except for 2 or 3 taniyans that he wrote for the different AzhvArs. And one of them is you see here. So you see that, you know, Bhagavat Ramanujar is capable of writing in Tamil. And of course, even though he didn't write any large works in Tamil, he did write, he cared enough about the AzhvArs, he cared a lot about Divya Prabandhams. In fact, he is known as Tirupavai Jiyar. And so to the point that he not only composed 2 or 3 taniyans in praise of the 2 or 3 AzhvArs, he also had a person, one of his sishyas, Tirukkurugai Pillan Piran, write a commentary on Thiruvaimozhi as well. Anyway, so this is very special because of that, because it's written by Bhagavat Ramanujar and it is in Tamil. So that combination makes it very special. The third thing that makes it very special is that it is a Nayaki Bhavam. In other words, he is using a technique that the AzhvArs have used on Emperuman. Remember that I told you that the AzhvArs sometimes imagine themselves to be Nayaki and think of Emperuman as the Nayakan. And the bhakti that they feel for the Emperuman, they capture it as Shringara Rasam. They capture it as the love that a Nayaki would express for Nayakan. In a similar way, Bhagavat Ramanujar talks about his bhakti for kulasEkhara AzhvAr, and he captures it by putting himself in that Nayaki bhavam. He imagines himself to be a Nayaki and kulasEkhara AzhvAr to be a Nayakan, and he talks about the love that he has for kulasEkhara AzhvAr. So you see, he's kind of turning the tables, if you will. So he's using the technique that the AzhvArs use to capture their love for Emperuman. He's using that technique to show his love for kulasEkhara AzhvAr. So you have to think of, you know, Ramanuja Nayaki, if you will. You know, let me first go through the meaning of this. So the Ramanuja Nayaki is going to talk to a pet parrot of hers, and she is going to say, "Oh, sweet nectar, I will feed you. Come here, oh young green parrot." So she is addressing this pasuram, this taniyan rather, to a parrot, a young green parrot. She says, "Come here, and I'll feed you sweet nectar. If you do what? If you just say his name, say the name of my sweetheart, namely kulasEkhara AzhvAr. Please say his name." And you will say that the sweetheart is kulasEkhara in this case, to my heart's content, okay, to heart's content. So it says here, so now in the intervening lines, the AzhvAr or the Ramanuja Nayaki, if you will, he is describing that kulasEkhara perumAl. He says, the virtuous one called perumAl, who has composed verses on Sri Rangam. You will see that, in fact, the first three padigams of perumAl Tirumozhi are about Sri Rangam. So he talks about the glory of his sweetheart, or rather her sweetheart, namely this kulasEkhara perumAl. And one of the glories is that he has composed verses on Sri Rangam. And then not only that, because this is a Nayaki Bhavam, so he is a very handsome young man that all the Nayakis in the world are after. So he says, those beautiful women who sport bow-like eyebrows, he is Manmada to them. So you see, of course, it's here that the love is really bhakti. So he's saying that just as he has great love for that Nayakan, namely kulasEkhara AzhvAr, all the women who sport beautiful bow-like eyebrows, they are also enamored of this kulasEkhara AzhvAr, that he is a Manmada to them, to this Chera king, the crown jewel of the Adiyars that we are, that particular kulasEkharan. That kulasEkharan, please say his name, so that when you recite my lover's name, that makes my heart fill with joy. So that's the meaning of this taniyan. So let's go through the taniyan and try to understand it word by word. So he says, Paingiliye, Pasumayana Kiliye. Pasumai means, it could mean two things. One is green colored, and it could also mean young. When we say Pasumayana Ilai, when we talk about that, also means a tender leaf, a young leaf. So Paingiliye, you can say it's young green parrot. Ingeva, come here. Well, she offers an incentive. Innamudam uttihen, inimayana amudam, sweet nectar uttihen. I will feed you. It's not even that I'll leave it here, I'll put it here and leave. She says, I will feed you. I will personally put it in your mouth. Because that's the only thing that the parrot has to do in return is to say the name of this Nayaki's sweetheart, namely kulasEkhara AzhvAr. Ten arangam padavalla sir perumAl. So he's a perumAl. This kulasEkhara AzhvAr is a perumAl, as I already described to you. Well, now he has 10 arangam padavalla. 10 means south. The arangam, Sri Rangam, that is in the southern part of India. 10 arangam padavalla sir perumAl. Sir means the glorious, so the virtuous one. So the virtuous one called perumAl, who has composed verses on Sri Rangam. In fact, the first three padigams of perumAl Tirumozhi. That's the one whose name I want you to recite, O parrot. And not only that, Ponnam means beautiful. Chilai said, normally in Tamil, Chilai means statue. That's the meaning that you're most used to. But in Divya Prabandhams, the word Chilai invariably means bow as in bow and arrow. So Chilai means bill, bow. Chilai said Nudelier. So what part of a woman's forehead it looks like a bow? That's the eyebrow, right? So Chilai said, so will pondra nudalier. Nudal means forehead. So it says the forehead that has this will shape, the bow shaped eyebrow. So that means she's referring to all the women who have that beautiful bow-like eyebrow on their forehead. For all of them is a veil. Veil refers to Manmada here. And Chera Kon, he is the king of the Cheras. He is the Chera king. Younger kulasEkharan endre kure. See here there's a pun on the word kulasEkharan. kulasEkharan is his name. Younger kulasEkharan, Younger kulam, our communities. Shekharan. Shekharan means pinnacle. Remember that in Tamil we use the word shikaram to refer to the summit or the pinnacle. Actually, it comes from the Sanskrit word shekhar. Shekhar means pinnacle or summit. For example, Chandra Shekhar, the one who has who wears the moon or the crescent on his summit or on his head. That is, of course, Shiva Peruman. So Shekhar refers to the summit or the shikaram. So here the word kulasEkharan is normally interpreted by Vyakhyaanakartas as kula plus Shekharan. Our community's pinnacle. So in other words, he is the crown jewel of our community, the crown jewel of what community is he talking about? The Adiyar, the Vaishnavite community. Okay. So Engal kulasEkharan endre kuru. So that kulasEkharan's name, please say it. Okay. Okay, so Innamudam Uttiyen Ingeva Paingiliye Tennarangam Padavalla Sirperumal Ponnam Chelaisir Nudaliar Vel Seralarkon Engal kulasEkhara Nindre Kurun. Okay, so I'm going to recite it, and then you can say it after me. And after I teach both the taniyans, I will then play the goshti. Okay, so again, the second time I say it with me, but please keep yourself muted. Innamudam Uttiyen Ingeva Paingiliye Innamudam Uttiyen Ingeva Paingiliye Tennarangam Padavalla Sirperumal Tennarangam Padavalla Sirperumal Ponnam Chelaisir Nudaliar Vel Seralarkon Ponnam Chelaisir Nudaliar Vel Seralarkon Engal kulasEkhara Nindre Kuru Engal kulasEkhara Nindre Kuru. Okay, so that's the meaning of this taniyan. Like I said, you should learn to relish this because of who the author is, and also because it uses the Nayaki Bhavam. It takes a page from the book of the AzhvArs and uses it to describe kulasEkhara AzhvAr, the bhakti towards kulasEkhara AzhvAr. Okay, here is the second one, the second taniyan. This one is composed by Manakkal Nambi. Manakkal Nambi is the Acharya of Sri Alavandar. Okay, so here, let's go through the meaning. So it refers to an incident from the life of Sri kulasEkhara AzhvAr. So he was a great bhakta of Sri Rama, and not only that, he always wanted to go to Sri Rangam. So his refrain every day was, I want to go to Sri Rangam. When can I go to Sri Rangam, etc. So he was not really very much interested in the administrative duties of his kingdom. He was always spending time with the Bhagavatas, with the Sri Vaishnavites. And certainly the ministers were quite scared of that, because they thought that the kingdom was getting neglected. So somehow they wanted to separate him from the Bhagavatas. So the scheme that they came up with was they hid a necklace, a jewel necklace that was used for Sri Rama in the palace. They hid it, and they put the blame on the Sri Vaishnavites, and they told Sri kulasEkhara AzhvAr that these Vaishnavites must have stolen that jewel necklace. And so they thought that the king would buy it. The kulasEkhara AzhvAr would buy that, and then he would banish the Sri Vaishnavites, and that way he would be able to focus more on administering the kingdom. But what happened was exactly the opposite. Now, normally when somebody brings a charge to a king, the king is supposed to be an impartial judge. So you should listen to the accuser, you should listen to the accused without having prejudged it, and then you should come to a judgment about whether the accusation is true or not. But in this case, the king said nothing doing. There's no way that the Sri Vaishnavites will ever take others' property. In fact, he says Sri Vaishnavites will not take others' property. And not only that, to prove that point, what he did was he took a kudam. Kudam means a pot like this, a metallic pot like this, and he put a venomous snake in it. So pambu, he put that pambu in that kudam, and he said, I'm going to put my hand in this kudam, in this pot, and if it is true that the Bhagavatas stole this necklace, let this snake bite me to death. And so he put his hand inside that kudam, inside that pot. And of course, as you can imagine, the snake did not do anything, did not harm the king at all. And that was conclusive proof that the Sri Vaishnavites were blameless. And so this was a very convincing way in those times to demonstrate that the blame did not rest with them. And not only that, the king actually got very frustrated with what the ministers tried to do. So he actually abdicated his kingdom. He crowned his son, and then went to Sri Rangam and lived as a bhakta from that point onwards. So that incident from Sri kulasEkhara AzhvAr's life is referred to in this taniyan. Okay, so it will say, with the necklace lost, that jewel necklace lost from the palace. When it was lost, said he, that is kulasEkhara AzhvAr, he said, there's no way that the Sri Vaishnavites will not take others' property. So he put his foot down and he said, no, the Sri Vaishnavites will not have stolen this, he said. And so what he did was he offered his support to them, not just with words. He put his, he really stood behind his words. So he said, so to them he offered support, not just verbal. He actually put his hand in a snake-filled pot. And of course, as we know, that the snake did not bite him, thereby proving that the Sri Vaishnavites were innocent. So that is the first two lines refer to that incident from Sri kulasEkhara AzhvAr's life. And then then the next lines talk about his bravery, his enemy's bravery. Remember, he was a king. He was a king who was able to annex the kingdoms of the Chora and the Pandya kings as well. So obviously he was a brave king. So his enemy's bravery he laid to waste. So in other words, he conquered his enemies. That's what it effectively means. And he was a benevolent king of Kolli. Kolli is the capital of the Chera kingdom. And he was also the king of kings. Okay, so you will see that there's a way it says that. And he was the gem of the Chera dynasty and the crown jewel of kings. Okay, so that's the meaning. So let's go through the Taniyan and try to understand the meaning. Aram Keda. Aram is a Tamil word for haram. In Sanskrit, haram means necklace. Haram Keda. Haram kettu poivida. So the necklace was lost. With the necklace lost, Paran Anbar. Okay, it should be Paran Anbar. It should not be Paran Anbar. So Paran Anbar Kollar. So the bhaktas of Emperman, Paran Anbar Kollar, அவர்கள் எடுத்து கொண்டிருக்க மாட்டார்கள் என்று, Paran Anbar Kollar என்று. So he said, there's no way that the Emperman's bhaktas would have taken it. அவர்களுக்கே வாரம் கொடு. அவர்கள் பட்சபாதமாக அவர்களுக்கே he gave support. Kudapambil, the kuda means pot, pambu means snake. So the snake-filled pot, in that Kaiyittavan, he put his hand in there. And so that's the end of the description of that story. And then Matravarai, enemies, Viram Kadutta, he destroyed their bravery. That is, he laid their bravery to waste. Sengol means benevolent king. So it's, Kodungol in Tamil means the opposite. Sengol means the benevolent king. Sengol, Kolli Kavalan. Kolli Kavalan. Kavalan is the protector. Kolli is the capital of the Chera kingdom. So this is a way of referring to the Chera king. So the king of Kolli. Villavar Kon. Kon means king. Villavar means people who carry bows. And of course, the people who carry bows, in this case, it refers to other kings. So he was the king of other kings. If you imagine, he was the king of the Chora king as well. He was the king of the Pandya king as well, etc. So he was the king of bow-wielding kings. He was the Cheran kulasEkhara. Chera Kulatin Shikaram. Chera Kulatin. So he's the gem of the Chera dynasty. And Mudivendar is the crown jewel. Shikamani. Mudivendar. So Mudivendar is kings. Mudisudiya Arasargal. Avargalidaye, he was a Shikamani. He was a crown jewel. So he was a crown jewel of other kings. Okay, so that's the meaning. So it's Aram Gada Paran Anbar Kollar என்று அவர்களுக்கே வாரங்கொடு கொடப்பாம்பில் கையிட்டவன் மாற்றலரை வீரம் கெடுத்த செங்கோல் கொல்லி காவலன் வில்லவர் கோன் சேரன் குலசேகரன் முடிவேந்த சிகாமணியே. Okay, so I'll teach you how to recite it. So the second time I say it with me. Okay. ஆரம் கெடப் பரன் அன்பர் கொள்ளார் என்று, ஆரம் கெடப் பரன் அன்பர் கொள்ளார் என்று அவர்களுக்கே வாரங்கொடு குடப்பாம்பில் கையிட்டவன், அவர்களுக்கே வாரங்கொடு குடப்பாம்பில் கையிட்டவன் மாற்றலரை வீரம் கெடுத்த செங்கோல் கொல்லி காவலன் வில்லவர் கோன். மாற்றலரை வீரம் கெடுத்த செங்கோல் கொல்லி காவலன் வில்லவர் கோன். சேரன் குலசேகரன் முடிவேந்தர் சிகாமணியே. Sharan kulasEkhara mudivenda shikamaniye. Okay, so we have learned both taniyans of the perumAl Tirumozhi. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the Goshti and you can recite with the Goshti. But remember, please keep yourself muted, okay? So it will recite each of these verses just once. Okay, let's go.
இன்னமுதமூட்டுகேன் இங்கே வா பைங்கிணியே தென்னரங்கம் பாடவல்ல சீர்பெருமாள் பொன்னஞ்சிரசேன் நுதலியல்வேள் சேரலர்கோன் எங்கள் குலசேகரன் என்னே கூறு ஆரங்களப் பல நண்பர் கொள்ளாரென்னு அவர்களுக்கே வாரங்கொடு குடப்பாம்பில் கையிட்டவன் மாத்தலரை வீரங்கெடுத்த செங்கோல் கொல்லிகாவலன் வில்லவர்கோன் சேரன் குலசேகரன் முடிவேந்தர் சிகாமணியே.
Okay, so that was the first and the second taniyan. I just want to mention one thing about the chanting. So in most cases, when you hear Goshti chanting, you will see that, for example, Endre Kuru, they will pronounce it as Enne Kuru. Okay, so that's the typical way that Vaishnava Goshti is chanted. So the N followed by R sound, that is usually pronounced as N followed by N sound, but I like to pronounce it as N followed by R, because if you learn the correct, the actual words, then you can always change to how the Vaishnava Goshti is chanted. In other cases, for example, there are words, let's take an example, Katru, Karavai, Kanangal, Palagarande, Setrar, Tiralariya, Chandru, Serichayam, that Katru, Karavai, that tra will be pronounced as tha. So it will be Kattu, Karavai, Kanangal, Palagarande, Settar, Tiralariya, Chandru, Serichayam. So that Chetrar Tiralariya becomes Settar Tiralariya. And that's one of the reasons why I don't like to use that, because Setrar means enemies, Settar means those who have died. So in the process of pronouncing Setrar as Settar, you essentially change the meaning of the word. And it may be okay if you really know that the original word is Setrar, but if you don't know that, you will be trying to interpret the word Settar, which really means something completely different, okay? So when I teach you, I will try to be faithful to the original Tamil words, but when you listen to the Goshti chanting, you will see that they are using that different convention, and that is fine, okay? I just want you to know what the original words are. Okay, I think what I will do is this. I was going to try to get to the actual pasarams today, but looks like that's not going to happen, so because we have already reached the end of the class period. So I will stop here today. I apologize for not being able to get to the pasarams of the perumAl, of that padigam that we wanted to study today. So we will close today's class with the Charama Slokam. Charama Slokam, Charama means the ultimate Slokam. In Vaishnavism, there is a thing called Rahasya Trayam, the 3 secret mantras. And so one of those secret mantras is this Charama Slokam. It's the third one of the 3, and it's taken from the Bhagavad Gita. So we will generally close every class with this Charama Slokam and then Mangalam, and that's how we will close it. So I will recite it. If you know this slokam, you can recite it along with me, but please keep yourself muted, okay? Sarva dharman parityajya mam ekam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami ma shuchah mangalam kosalendraya mahaniya gunabdhaye Chakravarti Tanujaya Sarvabhaumaya Mangalam. Sarvam Krishnarpanamastu. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the recording. So give me 1 minute. Sometimes it takes time to get the menu down. Please do not unmute yourself yet.